Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to FBCI Global Town Hall 2020 pre-conference event titled Ask Ambassador Havas Anything about the Law of the Sea, Ocean Governance, Maritime Security, Blue Economy, Global Maritime Fulcrum, Deep Sea Mining, also about Aquaman and Jack Sparrow. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Willie from FBCI, and I will be your Master of Ceremony for today. First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone who have joined this event. I hope everyone is healthy and graced with abundance from the God Almighty. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, the FBCR Virtual Global Town Hall 2020 will be convened on Friday, November the 20th, which is next week. The conference will be a global discussion which covers participants from different time zones, including Jakarta, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Berlin to Washington, D.C. This pre-conference event is aimed to capture everyone's excitement as we come closer to the Virtual Global Town Hall 2020 and to provide a platform where anyone can ask anything to experts in their respective fields. Joining with us today is Ambassador Havas Oegroseno as our exclusive speaker. His Excellency is Indonesian Ambassador to Germany and one of Indonesia's foremost experts on the law of the sea and maritime issue. Ambassador Havas, how are you?
Very good, William. Alhamdulillah, very good.
Thank you for joining us, Ambassador. It is very glad to have you with us. We also have with us Dr. Dino Patijalal, founder and chairman of FBCI, who will open this discussion with an opening remarks. Dr. Dino, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, thank you.
Glad to have you with us, Dr. Dino. Last but not least, we also have our moderator today. The moderator for today's event is Ms. Cindy Mandagi from FBCI. Without further ado, we shall start this discussion by inviting Dr. Dino Patijalal to deliver his opening remarks. To Dr. Dino Patijalal, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't really have any speech. I just want to welcome Havas Oegroseno. Havas is the same batch as me in the Foreign Ministry. I think there is a saying that the Foreign Ministry is run by two batches, the batch Angkatan 13 and batch 12. Pak Marty is from 12, Ibu Retno is from 12, kalau 13 itu saya, Andri Hadi, Pak Havas, Yuri, and you know, a whole bunch of others, right? The difference is I'm retired since 5-6 years ago, and Pak Havas is still running strong. He still has many years to go before retirement. You know, Pak Havas is one of the very few diplomats who actually specialize on the law of the sea. The previous generation, you had people like Professor Hasim Jalal, who's retired a long time ago. And the present generation, you have Pak Havas and very few others. And you know, that is really an irony because in Indonesia, maritime diplomacy is very important, right? So you are very lucky today to listen to somebody who's been in a lot of negotiations, involved in maritime dialogue and development of maritime policies. He's also had many achievements, you know, many boundary negotiations were wrapped up under him and so on, right? So feel free to ask him anything. And I know that if any of you go to Germany, especially Berlin, all of you can stay at his place for free and eat all his food in his refrigerator. If he doesn't let you, just tell me. But he promised that that's what he will do to all the students from Indonesia. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dino. With that remarkable address, we shall proceed to the main event, which is the moderated discussion with Ambassador Havas. I now welcome our moderator, Ms. Cindy Mandagi, to moderate the session. Ms. Cindy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Willie. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Cindy from FBCI, and I will be your moderator for today. Now, we're very excited to have here with us Ambassador Havas in the special pre-global town hall event titled Ask Ambassador Havas Anything. Ambassador Arif Havas Oegroseno, who is now Indonesian ambassador to Germany, first graduated from Faculty of Law at Universitas Diponegoro in 1986, before continuing his education at Harvard Institute for International Development, and finally graduating in 1992 from Harvard Law School. He then spent more than 30 years as an Indonesian Foreign Service officer, specializing in maritime and law of the sea. And before his current position as ambassador to Germany, Pak Havas was previously Indonesian ambassador to Belgium, Luxembourg, and the European Union from 2010 to 2015. So with that, we're very happy to have you here today, Pak Havas. And we have a big audience here ready to shoot you all their questions. And we have students, professors, researchers, businessmen, and a few government officials and maritime people here as well. And these are not only from Indonesia, but also from Malaysia and South Korea and Poland. So thank you all for joining. And before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone to please note the following. Firstly, all participants are required to turn on your camera, but please keep your audio muted throughout the session. And secondly, all participants may submit your questions through the chat box feature of the Zoom app. For our question and answer session, I will be choosing 3 to 4 questions per batch, in which Ambassador Havas will answer the questions collectively before proceeding to our next batch of questions. And we will take as many batches as we can during the span of the next 15 minutes so that hopefully everyone can have a chance to ask their question. So to begin our first batch, please feel free to ask your question, and I will be selecting from the chat box. All right, we are open to questions. So for any questions you have, please insert in the Zoom group chat. Okay. From FPCI UPH, Dante would like to ask a question to Ambassador Havas. The first question is, taking into account the geopolitical tensions in the South China Sea, do you think that it is possible for the disputes that could evolve into a crisis, for example, mirroring the severity of the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962? The second, so we have 4 questions in the chat box. That's the first question. For the next 3, this is from number 1 is, Honolulu is a great gateway for the United States to look to the east. Why don't Indonesia make Natuna our eye to look north to South China Sea? All right. For the third question, the seabed contains valuable rocks such as silver, gold, and even diamonds. Japan, China, and Papua New Guinea has been doing seabed mining. What is your view in the conduct of deep sea mining, Havas? And lastly, for this batch, it's the Somalian pirates have always been framed as unethical people who take and hurt other people on the sea. However, there are always 2 sides to a coin. Some others see Somalian pirates as people who just want to protect their seas from IUU fishing perpetrators. What is your view on this? So for the first batch, I'll close on that and hand over the floor to Ambassador Havas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me first of all express my thanks to FPCI, to Padino, and everybody who has come this morning in the discussions. We have 100 plus, so it's quite a good crowd. So South China Sea can be actually, to be objective, it can create or it can cause the war between the US and China. It's possible, but it is avoidable. If you look at the history, I think the history of the World War I is more apt as opposed to Cuban Missile Crisis, because Cuban Missile Crisis did not evolve into war. World War I caused by misunderstanding, miscalculations, and emotions run very high. So I think we are looking at probably similar situations now in the context of South China Sea, and we hope that there will be no miscalculation and there will be no emotions running very high. And we hope that the two powers in our region, China and the US, can establish dialogue and can also contribute to the reductions of conflict between the two countries. They will compete, of course. Competition is very good. Competition is healthy, actually. But they need also to collaborate in different types of activities. For instance, in the environment issue, in the climate change, they can contribute together on that. There is a very good study done by Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Professor Graham Allison, that mentioned about the conflict, the competition between the rising power and the resident power. And since 500 years ago, there were 16 different cases, and I think most of them, they went to war. Only a few did not go to war. So we do not want to see this type of competition between the US and China fester and create instability in our parts of the world. So yeah, it's possible, but it should be avoidable. I think actually we have already, in terms of Natuna, we have already developed a policy in Natuna, security and strategic policy, economic policy, infrastructure development, as well as the issue on the environment in Natuna. I was involved in, for instance, environmental issue in Natuna. In Natuna and Anambas, there is one species of fish. It's called the Napoleon fish. And Napoleon fish is very valuable. 1 kilogram of the fish costs $100. And it's extinct in many different parts of the world. In Natuna and Anambas, they are thriving. So the list of export is very limited. I think it's only, at that time, it was only 5,000 fish per year. And the farmers have, the fish farmers, they can have aquaculture of Napoleon fish up to 200,000 fish. So it's not sustainable for the farming to just sell 5,000 and keep the rest. So we come to an agreement with the international organizations that we will increase the quota of export up to, I think, 70,000 fish a year, but we release fish that is bigger than, I think, 3 kilograms. So I think this is a new, this is a new approach on the environmental issue in Natuna. So you can Google and find our policy on Natuna. It's quite comprehensive. Now, seabed mining, it's indeed very important for us. I think this is a very good platform for me to tell the story that Indonesia is successful to extend our seabed in the western part of Aceh. We had an area as big as Pulau Madura, 4,000 plus square kilometers. And there are resources over there. There are many different types of nodules, minerals that needs to be look at it, and it become a source of our income actually in the years to come. So I believe this is a very important aspect, and I think many students here, teachers and professors, I think you should look at exploitation of deep seabed mining in the areas around Indonesia, especially in the western part of Sumatra, in the southern part of Sumba, and the northern part of Papua. So these are frontier, if you will, on the resources for Indonesia to exploit in the future. Somali pirate issue is very interesting. I was involved in the discussions in the Security Council way back in 2006 or 7. It is true that the case of Somalia pirates came from the fact that there was a massive illegal fishing activities done by fleets from Europe, fleets from Asia, and therefore fishermen could not take the fish. And this is one aspect that often overlooked. Okay, and another aspect, of course, the increasing conflicts, increasing sectarianism in the region, and therefore the flowing of weapons, the flowing of different types of conflicts in the region, and that creates really difficult combinations of problems in that particular part of the world in East Africa. So they turn to become pirates. It should not become a justifications, because piracy is regulated under UNCLOS. If you are conducting piracy, then you are subject to international jurisdiction. So you should not say that we want to protect our waters by becoming pirates. No, you cannot do that. But the fact that they became pirates because of illegal fishing, because of the political instability, yes, it is true. But it's not a justification as such. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Havas. For our second batch of questions, firstly, from Ira Yulianti from UNPAR, she would like to ask you, how do you see China's declaration about the 9-dash line? And how is Indonesia supposed to respond to that? That's the first question. The second question from Binus. Jokowi introduced the Global Maritime Fulcrum in 2016 and 2017. What is it and what happened to the Global Maritime Fulcrum now? The third question is from Fadil Ramadiansyah from Universitas Hasanuddin. He would like to ask, what are the reasons for the absence of the continuation of the Global Maritime Fulcrum during the second term of President Joko Widodo? And lastly, for our second batch, from Universitas Pelita Harapan, Andrea would like to ask, considering President Joko Widodo's initiative of Global Maritime Fulcrum, how would this initiative affect the security dynamics of Indonesia's maritime territory? That is all for the second batch. I would like to give the floor back over to Ambassador Havas. Thank you.
Okay. On the 9-dash line declarations by China, we first saw it as official statement way back in 2009. Before 2009, the 9-dash line was basically statement here and there, unclear. People referred to it. The Chinese government, you said it in different occasions, but there was never a very clear proclamation as such until 2009. 2009, in the letter to the UN, in the context of protesting against the extension of continental shelf by Malaysia and Vietnam, they came up with a note and saying that this is our waters, this is the pieces of our waters, and the note was sent to the Secretary General of the UN. This is the first formal note that was made by China, and it was sent to the United Nations. Thus and therefore, all members of the United Nations were at the time sent and received it, and of course it was placed on the website of UN Doalos. We believe that the claim was baseless. It has no basis in conventional law of the sea. And therefore, Indonesia reacted to the declaration of 9-dash line by sending a diplomatic note in 2010. So if you research in the website of UN Doha Laws in 2010, Indonesia produced a diplomatic note. We are basically saying that the 9-dash line has no legal basis whatsoever. In making that note, we have done also some research on the discussions of baseline and on the discussion of EEZ during the negotiations of UNCLOS from the 1960s until 1980s. So we have lots of documents to consult, and we look at the position of the Chinese government. And Chinese government never mentioned about 9-dash line. Chinese government never mentioned about this particular thinking that they say. They never said anything about a 9-dash line. And actually, China was one of the leaders in promoting the EEZ for developing countries. And the EEZ for developing countries are, of course, measured from a baseline, and the baseline must be a baseline that is in accordance with law of the sea. And this is our positions at that time. And if you look at the decision of the arbitration between the Philippines and China, the argumentation is very clear that whoever owns these rocks and these features, they either have no sea whatsoever, no maritime zone, or just maximum 12 nautical miles. So the baseline, or the island where they are allowed to project the maritime zones are limited to a few islands and just maximum 12 nautical miles from that island. So I think the law is very clear. Now, China does not recognize the result. It's okay, But if in future cases, different countries, different claims on different issues, they are referring to these decisions as arguments, then it will become international law. I'll give you an analogy. In 1925, the United States claimed that the island of Miangas belongs to the US. 1925. And the Dutch, the colonial government, said, no, it belonged to us. And then they had a quarrel, and then they went to arbitration. The decision of the arbitration was island of Miangas, or Las Palmas in Spanish, belong to the Netherlands because of the principle of effective occupation, or effectivité. So when this island was decided by arbitrations, of course, it only concerned the United States and the Netherlands, right? Because it is just a conflict between these two countries. But the decision of the arbitration, actually a single person arbitration, Judge Max Huber, it was used in subsequent cases. And it was also used in our case in Sibaran Ligitan, which we lost because we did not show a legal effective occupation, and Malaysia won the case. And it was also used in the case of between Malaysia and Singapore. So there are over many different cases on sovereignty dispute that actually came from our case Sipadan case in Miangas. So one case decided in 1920s between two countries become international law today. So that is the analogy. So if China does not accept, it's not relevant. And if this case continues to be referred in the future, it will become international law. Okay. Now, Global Maritime Fulcrum. It's a very what do you call it? It's a very comprehensive idea. We have mapped it out, and we have the Indonesian Ocean Policy. And one of the greatest inventions of this GMF is the establishment of the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs, and it's now becoming Maritime Affairs and Investment. And there are a host of issues on ocean policy that are under the Global Maritime Fulcrum. You can look at the Indonesian Ocean Policy, Kebijakan Kelautan Indonesia (KKI), the only one in Southeast Asia, one of the few in Asia, and there are over 245 pages of implementation plan, and also a mechanism to review that. The challenge, I think, is to explain to the public that this is not just strategic issue, but also cover so many different issues. I'll give you an example. In the Global Maritime Fulcrum document in the Indonesian Ocean Policy, we have obliged ourselves to do calculations on the maritime economy of Indonesia. Not many people know exactly the maritime economy of Indonesia. Many people come up with predictions. Many people come up with projections. If you look at the internet, there are many people who say that our maritime economy is such and such amount, but they are not actually came up with hard data. So we work with BPS, Badan Statistik Indonesia, and we had numbers of Indonesian maritime economy. There are 11 clusters of the economy, and the number was I don't exactly remember the number, but it was equal to many countries, the percentage in terms of the GDP, in terms of the people working in the maritime area, but not as much as we would like to have. So I think it's very important to look at the documents in totality, okay, so that you will understand that some of the things that you don't think is relevant and actually is relevant. For instance, the port development. Port development is part of the Global Maritime Fulcrum. The establishment or the idea to strengthen the mangrove forest, that is part of the Global Maritime Fulcrum, the environmental aspect of that. The fact that we are, for instance, now looking at different possible military hardware procurement ships in Europe, that is part of the Global Maritime Fulcrum as well. So it's many different aspects that you have to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Havas. All right. We have so many questions lined up, so I hope you're ready to take them, Pak. For our next question, we have Anissa Apriliani from FPCI Unhas. Anissa says, "Good afternoon, Mr. Havas. It's a great honor for us to have the opportunity of meeting with you." Her question is, blue economy has a potential in maximizing the marine economic potential of Indonesia. However, we are still facing challenges in terms of the policy integrations, especially in fisheries management, and not to mention our maritime security is still at stake to some extent due to IUUF and SCS conflict. How is your protection regarding the implementation progress of blue economy in Indonesia? And what opportunity do you think that we will achieve by its implementation? All right, thank you to Anissa Apriliani. The second question we have is from UPN Veteran Jawa Timur, from Luna Koirunisa. She says, "Good afternoon, Ambassador Havas. Regarding to the declaration of the Global Maritime Fulcrum by President Jokowi in 2014, Indonesia has been doing many diplomatic efforts, such as maritime diplomacy, especially in ASEAN. One of the output was ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific that was formally declared in 2019. My question is, how does Indonesia maximize the AOIP as a strategy on maintaining its interest in the GMF? Thank you. All right, and for the last two questions for batch 3, we have Kevin Setiadi from Universitas Katolik Parahyangan. He asks, good afternoon, Pak Havas. I have two questions for you. Number one, concerning the status of straits for international navigation and the right of overflight over the straits. Does the strait status is considered international waters, thereby the airspace above the water is international airspace, or straits for international navigation is more or less similar to EEZ, where states have sovereign rights over the water. However, the airspace above it is international airspace. And secondly, in the event of a submarine that got caught conducting submerged passage over a state territorial sea, such as when the Japanese detected a Chinese submarine conducting submerged passage in 2004, what measures is the state allowed to take? Back to you, Ambassador Havas. Thank you.
I could not get it, the last part of the question about submarine.
All right. I think what Kevin Setiadi is trying to say is, if in the event a submarine gets caught conducting passage over the state's territorial sea, what measures is the state allowed to take?
Shoot them.
All right, back to you, Bob.
That's the answer. Yeah, shoot them, because it's a territorial sea. You're not allowed. You have to go up. You have to come to the surface. That's the international rule. If you are submerging in territorial waters, then you have no peaceful intentions, and we have all the rights to do all the necessary measures. Well, not exactly shooting directly first, but normally we do some communications. There are some protocols on that. The Navy understands very well on how you start the protocols for a foreign vessels coming into your territorial waters. But yeah, shoot them. So blue economy, it's not about fisheries only. Yeah, blue economy is also about energy generations coming from the wave, for instance. Blue economy is also about the seaweed farming, so it's about coastal communities development. And blue economy is also about mangrove protections as well. So it is much more comprehensive than just fishery. Fishery is one aspect of blue economy, but there are other aspects of blue economy as well. We have a couple of projects. When I was in Jakarta, we are doing a blue economy project with Denmark in different parts of islands in Indonesia. And the most challenging part, actually, it's not the fisheries, but it's the energy development, because we want to look at possible energy generations from the coastal area. There is also another aspect of blue economy that sometimes you don't realize: tourism. So if you build tourism along the coast, that is part of the blue economy as well. So it's a very large aspect. There's a very interesting work done by the government of Seychelles in Africa. They launch what they call the blue economy bond. So it's a bond that they put in the market. Not so much, I think it's only $500 million. And the money from the bond, they use them to develop the blue economy in the country. And the blue economy in the country that they develop includes sustainable tourism, coastal community development. Coastal community development that includes farming of seaweed, and then sustainable fisheries as well. And I think they have some project of floating solar panel. I think it's just a pilot project. So this is one of the aspect of a blue economy. Now, in terms of fisheries, of course, we have illegal fishing, not only in Indonesia, but around the world, and especially around the world today. Indian Ocean is overfished, Pacific is overfished. I mean, if you look at the availability of fish, I think Indonesia is now in a very good position. And we hope that the measures to maintain foreign illegal fishing in Indonesia is still maintained and still very strong. Now, on the Straits of International Navigation. So let me go back at the history of the discussions of the negotiation of conventional law of the sea. We, Indonesia, we want to be recognized as an archipelagic state where the islands and waters are united. Okay, the tanah air. So it's one unity. So waters are not separating islands, because that was what happened before. The political thinking in early 1900 was that if the Dutch would leave Indonesia, will Indonesia be separated because we have no single uniting factor? At that time, the single uniting factor was decolonizations. The threat comes from colonization. Other than colonization, there is not a single factor that unites us. And then Sumpah Pemuda came, and our founding fathers believed that we have actually uniting factors, which is Bahasa Indonesia, which is the smallest spoken language in Indonesia, and the fact that geographically we are tanah air, we are land and waters. So land and waters are united, and we are one nation. So nationhood, lingua franca, and geography. So I think this thinking, this ideology of Sumpah Pemuda, it's transformed into the thinking of our negotiators in the UN conventions negotiation. So we are claiming, and we are supported by many countries, that yes, Indonesia is a unity. It should not be separated by waters. On the other hand, the user states, countries, powers who have traversed strategic waters, Straits of Malacca, Strait of Singapore, Sunda Strait, Bali Strait, they say that, well, if you close the waters, then we are entering into your territorial waters. Then it means we have to be under your sovereignty, and therefore we have to pay to enter your waters. So this is the contentions, if you will. So this is the clash. So the compromise was that the water is owned by the coastal state, full sovereignty. However, if there are ships who just want to pass, not coming into our waters, they are guaranteed the freedom of navigations. They are guaranteed the rights in the straits used for international navigation. So that is the compromise between the two major interests. So the water is ours, but you have the right to pass through. You have the right to lewat. You have the right to navigate, to just pass through. So if you look very carefully in UNCLOS, there are requirements that this navigational behavior are allowed to do in the water of the particular strait that is owned by coastal states. Now, because they are just passing through, they are not coming into our water, so we cannot put them tax, we cannot tax them, we cannot ask them to pay money. So this is the international law, the straits used for international navigation. Now, the airspace above the straits, it's actually regulated not by law of the sea per se, but regulated by ICAO. international civil aviation organizations. So they are the one who decides the what do you call it, the lanes or the air routes above the sky. They have a meeting that decides them, and whoever wants to apply or fly on the sky, they have to apply for routes permission in the ICAO. So it's not automatic that the airspace above the strait it's international flights. So I think this is the legal aspect of the airspace and the sea below the airspace. Another example, under the chapter on archipelagic states, okay, a country, when they decide archipelagic sea lane, so if we decide, okay, this is a lane in archipelagic waters, then the aerospace inside, above it is also follow the lane, okay? That is written in the convention, but the convention also mentioned that the actual use of the airspace above it, above the archipelagic sea lane passage, has to go through the process in ICAO. And so far, since there is no process in the ICAO, therefore, flying above the archipelagic sea lane passage is not allowed. So that's although it's allowed by the convention, but in actual fact, the implementation, it's depend on the organization that takes care of the civil aviations. Why? Because of the safety. The safety of navigations in the air is very important, probably more important as opposed to navigations on the sea, because on the sea, the vessels move very slowly, whereas in the airspace, the flight can go on very, very quickly. And if you just look at the flight radar 24 around the world, you see it's very crowded and it's very dangerous if you do not have a very clear regulation from the ICAO. Okay?
All right. Thank you very much, Havas. For our next batch, we have several more questions lined up. First from Anis Rahmi from Unisri. What do you think about Indonesia that has been set by other nations as the biggest plastic waste maker in Southeast Asia? Indonesia was ranked 2 in Asia after China. And what are the impacts of being the biggest plastic waster and consumer in the social politics of Indonesia? The second question is from Austin Anderson. He would like to ask, do you think that Indonesia, as one of the members of ASEAN, should play a role in bridging the South China Sea issue through dialogue and mutual understanding with China and ASEAN members, considering there has been an uprising from external influences that stir up around the South China Sea area? Number 3 is from Moses. He asks, despite the coronavirus, countries seem very excited in forwarding the outer space race. However, the law of the outer space is still vague. If I may ask, to whom does the outer space belong to? And does the principle of common heritage for mankind for seabed under the high seas apply here in the outer space? And lastly, from Koirun Nisa from UII, she says, good afternoon, Mr. Havas. I would like to ask a question related to the lifting of the ban on the export of lobster seeds by the Minister of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, Edi Prabowo. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this policy?
Okay, on the plastic issue, South China Sea and outer space and lobster ban. Now, I disagree with the analysis that states that Indonesia is the largest plastic waste producer, because the number does not add up. You know, we were said that we throw plastic to the sea somewhere like 7 tons a year, and we only consume 4 tons a year. So the number doesn't add up. The 4 tons a year of plastic that we use and produce, only 1 million actually is not being able to be recycled. This is a number that we have done ourselves, but that is not the question. It's not a question of agreeing on the number or not. We are not running from the reality that yes, there is a big problem of plastic waste going to the ocean. It's a fact that we have to accept. And apparently it's not only Indonesia, but also the world. We have, I think, 6 floating islands of plastic around the world. One in, I think two in the Atlantics, one in the Indian Oceans, 2 in the Northern Pacifics, and I think 1 in the Southern Pacific. So we have 6 floating plastics in the world's oceans, and Indonesia is flanked between the floating plastics in the northern part of Pacifics and in the Indian Oceans. And of course, we also have our problem, which is rather structural problem. And maybe many of you do not realize that it is a problem. I live in South Jakarta, and I pay for my sampah, waste management, and satpam, 100,000 rupiah. I don't know how much you pay, Cindy, in your household. Okay, how much you pay household for sampah management?
I live in an apartment, but I don't pay.
Yeah, apartment. How much you pay?
I think around 1 million.
Yeah. You see.
Yes.
So in apartment you pay 1 million, in Tebet you pay 100,000, in Menteng probably you pay, I don't know, in Bintaro you pay, I have no idea. So actually we don't even have a standard of waste management in Indonesia. That's a big problem number 1. Problem number 2, before political reform, waste management, pengelolaan sampah, was taken care of by central government. And now pengelolaan sampah is taken care of by city government or mayor government or kabupaten. Okay. And the global standard for waste management is $15 per person per year. And I was informed that there is only 2 provinces who can provide $15 per person per year, which is, I think, DKI, and I think somewhere in I think Surabaya or something. So it's a two provinces or 2 cities. The rest of Indonesia, they provide only $6, $7, sometimes $5 per person per year. That is at the level of the local government. So this is the journey of our waste. We had a waste from our house, so we pay whatever amount that our RT asks us to pay, which is not uniform across Indonesia, and someone that our RT paid picked it up, okay. And then the sampah, the waste will go to a first collection point, okay? And that first collection point was the place where the local government money comes and starts. And then from there, it journeys to the last collection point. So that is how our sampah goes around, okay? So if the standard is $15 per person per year, and you only have $6 per person per year, you are bound to have leakages. You are bound to have bocor, and the bocor goes to river, and the river goes to the sea, and that is a big problem of our waste management today. So what to do about it? So I think if you look again at the type of waste is very important. What kind of waste that are leaking to the ocean, and most of are the single-use plastic bag. because bottles, PET bottles, they were already taken from our houses and they were sold. Okay, there are bank sampah, there are companies who are doing recycling, of course, but the single-use plastic bag is the problem that we face because it has no economic value, and they just throw it away. Pemulung, they don't like it; they just leave it like that. And I think this is a behavior change that we have to do. So I think local government should ban a single-use plastic bag, and we should also start looking at the different material for single-use plastic bag. I mean, ideally, if we can sort at home, but sometimes we sort nicely at home, which one is food, which one is plastic, which one is cardus, paper, and then they took it together and they dump it again together, in the collection point as one pile without sorting. Why? Because they have no money in this type of issue. So this is a big challenge for us. Here in Germany, I work with an investor, a German investor. We have a pilot project in a small village called Muncar in Banyuwangi. So Muncar was one village that has a lots of a problem of plastic leakage, and the leakage from Muncar go to the southern part of Banyuwangi, and it goes to Bali, and it destroyed the environment. So investment is not so much; it's only 4 million euros a year, and the return of the investment is about 6%, and the money is being used to increase the capacity of the village Muncar to manage waste there. And now they increase the capacity, I think, from about 40% up to 60%. So if they keep increasing the capacity to manage the waste, then you will have less and less plastic waste. So I think for you, young generation, you should also look at this important issue for our future. South China Sea. South China Sea, there are two big things, two big matters on South China Sea. The number one issue is the question, are you going to solve it or are you going to manage it? So my view is that South China Sea is difficult to solve. Solving, meaning legally speaking, we know who owns which islands and how many islands, okay? And this is impossible, I think, to have a solution on South China Sea issue. South China Sea issue is the only sovereignty dispute where the claimants are more than two countries. And the features that they fight over are not clear. For us, it's clear in terms of Siparan Likitan. Indonesia, Malaysia, 2 islands, Siparan Likitan. The US and the Netherlands, 1 island, Pulau Miangas. Malaysia, Singapore, 1 rocks, Pedro Branca. Here, how many features? 100, 150, 300, 600, 60, we never know. Nobody actually came up and see, okay, I claim A, B, C, and D, this is the location. No, we claim everything. So it's a very unfortunate situation. Therefore, a solution is not very easy. I would say it's impossible. The only thing that we can do is to managing the South China Sea issue, so that it will not explode into triggering point of a major conflict escalations in the region. And this returns to the first questions in our discussion today, whether South China Sea issue can become a flashpoint to a larger conflict within the US and China. My answer was, it's possible. It's not impossible, but it should be avoidable. Outer space. It happened to be my thesis when I was in university. My thesis about outer space. And the rule is the same with the ocean, common heritage of mankind. I think it's very much established today that everybody has a lot of satellites there. I think the question of outer space today, it's not the legality, because the law is very clear. The problem is like the plastic waste. The problem is what they call the space debris. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of satellites of different sizes already. Many of them are dead, not functioning, and therefore they become a space debris, and they're very dangerous. And some of them, they enter the orbit, they are burned in the atmosphere, but some are not. So this is man-made sampah in the outer space. So this is another problem that we have to face in the future. Now, lobster ban. Now, I think the one that can look at now the price is going down, and I think personally, I believe that we should develop a farming technology in Indonesia, or farming technology of lobster, so that we can sell lobster with a value-added one. And I think we should not stop by just selling the raw material, but we should also develop a technology that would allow us to have a farming of lobster. We are known to have a very good technology and capability in farming, different type of fish. So farming lobster should not be a problem for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Pak Havas. And I think we can begin our last batch for today. Would you be willing to take 5 questions, Pak? Maybe 2?
Yeah, I'm running out of time.
All right, sure, 3 questions. The first question, I think this could be combined. This is from Farah Zahira from FPCI Unhas and also from Yiziria from UPH. They're asking, good afternoon, Mr. Havas. I would like to ask a question regarding China's Belt and Road Initiative. In your point of view, to what extent does the potential of China's BRI could change the world? Because with the overlapping interests of the PRC's Belt and Road Initiative and Indonesia's Global Maritime Fulcrum that has strengthened the Indonesian PRC relationship, do you think the external outlook towards this friendliness will compromise Indonesia's bebas aktif as being more leaning towards China? All right, and for the second question, last week's 2020 United States presidential election, which ended with Joe Biden's victory as the 46th president of the United States, raises big questions about what the United States, under the Biden administration, will do in the face of China's aggressive foreign policy in the South China Sea. Although Indonesia does not have a direct dispute with China over the 9-dash line, there is an impression that China also wants to claim the North Natuna Sea as part of the 9-dash line, seen from the incidents of the entry of Chinese fishing boats escorted by the People's Liberation Army to the North Natuna Sea, which happened last September. From your perspective, will the Indonesian government take advantage of the Biden's victory momentum to strengthen cooperation with the United States in an effort to pressure China to be more serious in adhering to the 1982 UNCLOS principles about the South China Sea? That was a question from Igusti Putu Narendra Shaputra. And lastly, we will take this question. It is, how does Germany's drastic shift from its previous ambiguous position on the Indo-Pacific region to announcing an Indo-Pacific region policy guideline 3 weeks ago affect Indonesia's foreign policy relations with Germany? Back to you, Ambassador Havas.
Thank you. I think there is one important aspect in Belt Road Initiative that people are not sometimes they are looking very carefully. In many parts of the world, one of the elements of Belt and Road is economic development in the forms of loan, in the form of government loan. Okay. It happens in many different parts of the world, and for Indonesia, I think we have a very clear policy on receiving investment from China. And first and foremost, it has to be business to business, B2B. We receive no loans whatsoever in the context of investment or development package from China. Say, for instance, the case of Morowali investment for nickel. It's not a loan. It's an investment. It's a business proposition with a very clear cost and benefit analysis. And Indonesian government has the ability to tax on the project. Indonesian people works in the project. Indonesian company also works in the project jointly. The railway, for instance, is not a loan. It's a business to business. So I think this is what is make it different between BRI approach in Indonesia and other countries. In addition to loan, not receiving loan, I think we also have a policy that the technology that comes is the first class technology, not the second or third of technology, or what we call them KW. No, you don't want to have KW 2, KW 1, KW 3. No, we want to have the real technology, a very good technology that comes to Indonesia. And then, of course, we want to have a technology that is environmentally friendly. Environmentally friendly is not unsustainable. We want to have technology that very ecologically responsible. And we will also need to have a cap on the foreign workers from China in one particular project. So I think this is the requirements that Indonesia can and has been able to force on any discussions with China as opposed to any other country. And of course, in terms of investment, Indonesia is opened not only from China, but also investment from different parts of the world. And increasingly, after COVID, we have seen many different companies who were investing in China. They want to relocate to different parts of the world. And some, they relocate back to the countries where they came. Some, they want to relocate in Southeast Asia. So this is a very good opportunity for Indonesia to try to get the relocations of companies who are moving out from China. We have already quite substantial number of companies, I think from Japan, Korea, the US, who are moving out from China and going to Indonesia. So this is again a very clear example that even our economic policy is independent and active. We are not depending on one particular power. We are depending on global markets. We are depending on the fair trade. We are depending on the ability for Indonesia to talk to everybody in different parts of the world when it comes to investment. I think, of course, this is due to the fact that Indonesia is not a small country. You guys have to always keep in your mind, we are 275 million populations. Foreign countries are looking at us that we are not small country. I think it's very important to keep this in our mind, especially when we are having a discussion with different parts of member of international community. On the issue of the new government in the US, I think there are some analysis saying that the US relations with China, it's difficult because of Trump versus China. But if you look very carefully, this is across political party. This is not just Republican. This is Republican and Democrat both. We still need to see what kind of policy that comes out from White House towards Asia. We used to have the policy of President Obama pivot to Asia, and we have seen an engagement, a lot of engagement from the US during President Obama with our parts of the world. And I think this is what I believe we want from our part of the world. And not only what I want, but I hear from many different colleagues, think tanks, government officials, ambassadors from Southeast Asia. We want to have a constructive relations between the US and China. Competition is impossible to curb. They will have competitions. As a matter of fact, I would argue that the US and China should compete constructively, but they should be able to find a way to collaborate together in many different fields, climate change, pandemic, environment. So there are so many different aspects that they can work together. Peacekeeping, for instance, I mean, the US and China are permanent member of Security Council, so they can be working together in different platforms. So this is not Cold War in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, because during the Cold War, you have a completely different set of economy, okay? Whereas now you have American investment in China, you have European investment in China, Chinese investment in Europe and in the US as well. So the economic relation is so intertwined that you are dependent already in one and another. We have globalizations, we have freedom of movement of people and capital. So we have seen all of this different connectivity that marks differently as opposed to the Cold War. So what we would like to see from the US and also from China is a constructive relationship. They may not like each other because like and dislike is not a business of state. Business of state is national interest, and we want them to be constructive and working constructively. They should compete on different area, technology, for instance, because if they compete, they have a competitive product, and you can buy them cheaper. So it's not coming from just one source. So this is what I would like to see. Now, Germany, I think there are a couple of aspects, and I think one of the aspects is, of course, the uncertainty from Washington, D.C. In the past on how they will deal with Europe. Washington is also increasingly in the last couple of years been very critical of Europe, especially Germany. And Europe want to have a sovereignty in terms of deciding its own direction of foreign policy, and and also increasingly Europe and China have some contention issue, especially on investment and copyrights. So I think Germany is giving leadership in the European Union to give a model examples on how you engage Asia in a much more comprehensive manner. When I was ambassador to European Union, 2010, 2015, every time I invite Brussels politicians, Brussels commissions to look at Asia, they only look at China. They don't look at our parts of the world, Southeast Asia, comprehensively. So I think now it's changing, and it's a good time for also Indonesia to engage Europe, to engage Germany, and German policy towards Asia Pacific are comprehensive. It's not just geopolitics. I'll give you an example. We managed to negotiate with Germany on green infrastructure initiative of valuing 2.3 billion euros. So our green infrastructure initiative with Germany is big, 2.3 billion euros, and And that relates to the first questions in this session about Belt Road. So, we are open to any investment and cooperations coming from different parts of the world. So if China is investing, say, on railroads or in different parts of investment in Indonesia, with Germany, we invite them to invest in green infrastructure. And it's 2.3 billion euro. It's quite a sizable amount of money. And we're also working with Germany on establishing the first ever World Mangrove Center in Indonesia. So it's another policy or environment between Indonesia and Germany that we work together with Germany. So I think German policy towards our parts of the world are comprehensive. It's not only about security, but it's also on the environment, on the educations. We work with Germany on the vocational training, SMK, and Polytechnic, and this is a new direction where we are going with Germany. So, terima kasih. Thank you very much. I have to run, although it's very fun to be here with all of you.
All right. Thank you very much, Havas. And that wraps up our question and answer session. Again, apologies to everyone who sent in your questions, but unfortunately, because of time constraints, we weren't able to take them all. And unfortunately, we didn't get any questions today about Aquaman either. So perhaps we can ask this to Havas at another time. All right. As a closing statement, Havas, is there a message that you would like to deliver to the audience here today who have tuned in?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Dino mentioned about the need for all of us to look at our ocean, the need of Indonesian young generations to study more about our oceans. It's not just law of the sea. Law of the sea is important, and also about the environment of the sea, the coastal community, the science of the ocean. So it's a very big responsibility, I think, for all of us, and especially for the younger generations, to look after our oceans in the way that you can do it by yourself. Aquaman and Pirates of the Caribbean are actually one of the very few movies about oceans, as opposed to movies about outer space. You have Star Trek this, Star Trek that, you have Star Wars, you have Riddick, you have, I don't know, there's so many movies about the outer space, but very few actually movie about the oceans. And it's sometimes it's ironic because people know more about faraway stars than the bed of the ocean, which is only 10 kilometers from the surface of the ocean. So it's fascinating to see that we are such ignorance in our own ocean. I'll give you a very example. My own experience. I was in the Paris Climate Agreement 2015, and there was a group of countries and scientists and think tanks who want to bring the ocean issue into the Paris Climate Agreement. We were banned. We were not even allowed. I mean, I was government officials. We were not even allowed to enter the discussion room. Discussion room is only for the Paris Agreement. Oceans, we were given a building. It's like 500 meters away from the conference center. And in this building, we were given a hall that can house like 2,000 people. And there were only 200 of us. So you see how empty is the room. To give the example that no one gives a damn about the ocean. And if you look at the Paris Climate Agreement, there is only one word ocean in the preamble, not in the paragraph inside it. So the latest, largest climate agreement does not say about ocean. That is unbelievable. So I think ocean is not taken into account very seriously. Of course, people say he this and that, but the fact is that there is not a single climate change treaty mentioning about the ocean. So I think the responsibility, I think, falls to all of us and to younger generations. Because we happen to be the largest archipelagic states in the world, if we can take care of our waters, we can take care of our ocean, and people around the world will look at us as an example. And you will be the leaders of these examples in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Havas. On behalf of the audience here today and on behalf of FPCI, thank you very much, Ambassador Havas, for the great insight and the fruitful discussion that we all had today. And also thank you to everyone for your questions here on Zoom, and also to everyone tuning in live on FPCI's YouTube channel. I'll hand the floor back over to Willie.
Okay, thank you very much, Cindy, and our highest appreciation to Ambassador Havas Oegroseno, who have addressed questions from our participants and impart knowledge to everyone who have attended this event. We've seen great questions, ambassadors, although not all that can be answered in this discussion. For example, from Aurelia about the canals, from Sheila about the glaciers, and also about greenhouse effects to the environment and everything else that we cannot answer today. However, with this excitement, Ambassador, we surely believe that in the future years, we will see more maritime experts such as Ambassador Havas in our communities. And moreover, our gratitude is extended to Dr. Dino Patijalal, the Chairman of Foreign Policy Committee of Indonesia, and all of the participants who have contributed tremendously during this discussion. And ladies and gentlemen, before we say goodbye, we have two important announcements to make. The first one is that we would like to remind you that the Virtual Global Town Hall 2020 will be convened in less than a week. And as for now, we have received confirmation from Foreign Minister of Indonesia, Her Excellency Retno Marsudi, Foreign Minister of the PRC, His Excellency Wang Yi, Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, former Minister of Sports, of Youth, and of Malaysia, Mr. Syed Sadiq, and also Distinguished Professor of International Relations, Dr. Satnai. And also there are many more names to be announced. And please check out our website at www.gth2020.com for a complete list of confirmed speakers. And we kindly ask everyone to invite as many friends and colleagues as possible to register through our website. And the second announcement, ladies and gentlemen, is that FPCI will convene two other pre-global town hall events titled Ask Amitabh Everything about the US election, IR theories, and Indo-Pacific with Professor Amitabh Acharya on Monday, November the 16th. And also Ask Ambassador Pikat anything about climate change, EU programs, and scholarships on Tuesday, the 17th of November. You must register yourself to get access to these events. And registration information and guidance is available at our Instagram account at FPC Indo. We are hoping to see you there as well. With those announcements, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, now we have reached the end of our event. We hope to see you again at Ask Amitabh Anything and Ask Ambassador Pikat Anything. And of course, at FPCI Virtual Global Town Hall 2020 around the world, around the clock. On behalf of FPCI and Global Town Hall Committee, I thank everyone who has participated in this event, and stay safe and salam. See you again, Ambassador Havas.